And we are back! We are back in business, sitting in the same spot, in the same car, this Kia Cerato, which I am giving back today. So enjoy the view. But, if you didn't catch our last video, make sure you go and watch it. You can go to our channel, which is called...
Cars_mad.
Cars_mad, and we talked all things cars in Australia. We had lots of different conversations, but today on Cars_mad, we're going to be talking about
EVs.
EVs.
More importantly, the different types of EVs.
As always, I have a coffee because, as Willem knows, I drink way too much coffee. It keeps me fueled, so cheers to that. But today we're going to talk about cars that may not even need fuel. What energizes these cars, you say? Well, let's talk about it.
Well, we're going to start up with regular hybrid electric vehicles, or HEVs, versus plug-in hybrid, like regular hybrid vehicles versus PHEVs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think first off, the thing is, I think HEVs, hybrid electric vehicles, charge off their engine quicker, but you can't plug them in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a plug-in hybrid you can. Plug-in hybrids are probably more common with more premium brands like BMW or Audi or Mercedes or that sort of thing. Whereas hybrid electric vehicles like Toyota, they have a lot of hybrids, and they're bringing out the new BZ4X electric vehicle. But anyway, electric vehicles are taking over, but are pure electric vehicles really the future, or are hybrid electric vehicles or PHEVs going to be the solution?
Because we talked about last time how bad some of the charging stations publicly are, and how hard it may be for some people to have one at their home, which would mean if you were straight up only electric powered vehicle, you could have some issues with that.
Exactly. And what I think is, if you're living in the city, probably go for a PHEV or a regular, or a pure electric vehicle. Because a PHEV, if you live in the city, chances are you can just charge it overnight and you will only ever run on electric power. With an EV, you could do pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
But when it comes to long distance driving, you're probably going to be considering a PHEV or a hybrid electric vehicle. You could go either way, but the range of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, of bigger vehicles, is probably bigger. And you do have pure electric vehicles, but that are like that, but they just don't go as far.
Who do you think currently are the brand leaders in, let's go all of them. Electric vehicles first, then we can talk HEVs, then we can talk PHEVs, but who's leading the way in these?
Okay, so with electric vehicles, I reckon Tesla, because Tesla really kind of started this whole electric vehicle thing. And I think Tesla probably for EVs. And then for PHEVs, it's hard to say. I reckon, probably some more premium brand. I don't know, but PHEVs, it's hard to pick. When it comes to HEVs, hybrid electric vehicles, I reckon Toyota, they do have a huge range of them. And they're just really, a really simple design, but it works, and you can get that in a Kluger or in the RAV4, Yaris, Corolla sedan, Camry. You can get it in
pretty much all their models, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a very similar system. And I feel like that is probably puts Toyota in the lead for regular hybrid vehicles.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they really, with the RAV4, I'm not sure if they're the best, but they have the best range.
And RAV4 can kind of do it all if you have a family, if you're solo, if you're
Yeah.
I mean, how's its four-wheel drive capabilities?
Bad.
Yeah, okay. So
Nah,
for forward
it's not
driving,
too
you
bad,
don't want a RAV4?
Well, Iron Man do have some accessories for the RAV4.
Okay.
And, you know, but no SUV like that is going to work. But I've seen the hybrid off-road. It's pretty bad compared to others.
Okay.
Another one is the new Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. That is going to be powered by a 2.3 litre petrol engine that has this much power and this much torque. So that's pretty, you know.
There's some impressive numbers.
Yeah. And that is like crazy. I mean, they're just going to be really good. And Ford claims 3 litres per 100 kilometre, which means that you're going to be able to get off an 80 litre tank, which is what comes standard, pretty long range.
Well, yeah, if they're anywhere near that claim, you're going to get a lot of usage out of that one tank.
Yeah, and I think Ford really have nailed it there. And I mean, the Ford Ranger was already a class-leading car, but with a PHEV available, I think more people are going to be buying it. But unfortunately, price might be getting on to that, towards that $100,000 even. So they will be expensive.
How much is their regular Ranger?
It starts at about $50,000 for a dual cab.
So they're almost doubling the price when it comes to this PHEV here.
Well, we don't know that is going to be the price. It might be less.
Guess we'll have to wait and see when they release numbers.
Exactly. And maybe they have, but by the time you're watching this, but we don't know of any at the moment. And another thing is that the Ford Ranger and also Everest PHEV, they'll be really practical because I feel like you'll get an instant boost, so good for off-roading. But the other thing as well is, what do you do with an electric vehicle? Like, can electric motors really go in water or mud when you do water crossings or mud box?
That's true, I haven't thought about
when
that.
You're off-roading. Like, if you have a Cybertruck, what do you do? Like, with a petrol engine car or like a combustion engine car, you put a snorkel on, you do all that sort of stuff. But with a electric car, what do you do?
I think that is a business idea right there. If anyone's watching this and you've come up with a way to protect electric vehicles in these, you could almost start up your own business that is a four-wheel drive, electric four-wheel drive accessories company. I think that might be a thing.
Yeah. And if you know of any ways to waterproof or mudproof your electric vehicle, let us know in the comments below.
Please do.
And I guess, you know, we don't know that really yet, but I'm sure we'll find out eventually. And I'm sure a couple of people will find out the hard way.
I'm sure they will. If you've found out the hard way so far, if you've tried to take your electric vehicle off-roading and had quite a fail, how about you comment that below too, because we'd love to hear about those.
Yeah. And another thing is, well, EVs. So, let's break it down. So what is best? EVs, PHEVs, or HEVs? Well,
let's go pros and cons maybe. So for the electric vehicle, obviously one of the biggest pros that people talk about is that it's good for the environment, and
theoretically it is. But if you charge it off non-renewable energy, then it's not really.
Some negatives for the electric vehicle, obviously, if something goes wrong electronically, you've got nothing. Very expensive.
And also,
your range is going to be usually
limited, and also like you can't charge it everywhere. Like, you know, they could put, like, you see in the middle of the canning stock route, they could put like a huge square kilometre solar bank or something like that, and put a massive battery there, and have chargers in the middle of the canning stock road. But the thing is, you wouldn't even make it to the middle of the canning stock road on an electric vehicle anyway, so...
I think that's what it is.
Like, a couple of 1,000 kilometres.
Yeah, and usually everywhere you go in Australia, rural, city, they put along the way petrol stations because they know people are going to need them.
And in the middle of the Canning stock route, the Capricorn Roadhouse has a fuel drop.
Mm-hmm.
So you arrange for them to drop the
That's
right
smart.
type of fuel for you, and they'll put it there by helicopter, and then when you come by, you fill up.
But obviously, if you're an electric vehicle,
You can't do that.
you're stuffed.
Exactly.
So-
They're not going to be putting batteries. They're not going to be like refreshing batteries in the middle of the Canning stock route.
So electric vehicles sound good. If they're done right, they're good for the environment. They are fun. They're the way of the future, but there's a lot of negatives that would make it actually not a very practical car. So
Yeah,
let's
but
move on.
some pros are
Oh yeah, let's do more.
you have instant power, so off road, say, or on road, you just can overtake. You can just straight away go for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pro, and also they are really quiet,
Yes.
but they're also really expensive. I feel like they're super expensive. And the interesting thing is, like, you could buy you could buy like a Ford Everest, like a proper off-roading SUV, for the same price that you could buy a small, like, Tesla Model 3.
So price.
Yeah.
You got to think about price. Yeah, what's practical for?
If you can afford one, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy one, but if you can't afford one, sometimes they're not the best option. Which brings us on to our next one, PHEVs. So the pros of PHEVs are, well, you can run on petrol power, you can plug them in when you're, like, overnight, and you can generally with PHEVs, sometimes not with HEVs, but with PHEVs, you can generally lock them into EV mode so that it will be not running on petrol power at all.
Smart.
And you can plug them in. Some you can even use DC fast charging. Which is interesting.
So it kind of sounds like in a PHEV, you're going to get
The best of both worlds.
the best of both worlds. The pros from what we're about, full electric. The pros of having a petrol or diesel engine,
Yeah.
depending on which PHEV you have. Mix them together and you add the good and the good. But does that mix provide any issues? Is there any negatives that people should be aware of?
Well, I think that with a PHEV, it's going to be more expensive than a regular hybrid, and it's definitely than a regular petrol version. You can get a MG HS for almost half the price of the Plus EV version, the
Wow.
plug-in hybrid version. Whereas with a electric vehicle, that's going to be even more expensive, but a regular petrol vehicle is just so much cheaper. And are you really getting that much more from it than a petrol vehicle? Well, it depends. If you don't need it, then maybe don't get it just because you want to be looking after the environment. It doesn't help that much. And also, another thing when you pay a lot of money for a car, where does that money go? Does it go to your local area? No, it goes to the country of where they are making those cars. So if you buy, say, a BMW, all that money goes to Germany, pretty
Right.
much.
So if you are someone who's passionate about, giving into the local businesses and the economy of where you're
If
from.
you're trying to look after the environment but also your home country, then I don't think that spending more money on an electric car is actually going to help your own area that much. And I think that the other thing as well is a petrol vehicle. When you buy petrol, you go in, you get a snack, like a pie or something, and you're supporting your local area or wherever you are. Whereas when you go to an electric charger, you're just paying money to that huge company that runs them. So that's another thing to consider. But PHEVs generally are a good option. The only thing will be finding because they're just not as popular. Like, there's just not as many around as regular hybrids, I think. And on to regular hybrids is the pros. Well, they charge slightly quicker from the engine than a PHEV. Smaller battery, so they can be lighter. And they are, just generally less expensive than PHEVs.
And I suppose you don't need to have a charger or find a charger. The issues we've talked about with public charging, and that's wiped out because you don't actually plug it in. But some negatives.
You can't plug it in, that's a negative, obviously, but generally they're just not as flexible as a PHEV, and you can get them. But the other thing as well, a good thing is that they're quite cheap, because generally the cheaper brands will have a regular hybrid. But say with Toyota, they have a lot of them, so a regular hybrid should be easy to find a model. But overall, I think that the PHEV is probably the best all-rounder. Well, anyway, yeah, but I think if you live in the city, you're probably going to either go for a PHEV or an EV. I think an electric vehicle would work fine, and I think an electric vehicle might be the better option in the city. But if you just want to do a mix of all driving, if you want a daily driver, get a PHEV. Best way to go. We didn't really talk about the petrol engine, but we're talking about the way of the future. Petrol engine is probably not the way of the future.
No, I think you're right. I think for now, we're sitting in a petrol engine. I own a petrol engine, but looking 10, 20 years in the future, I think nearly every car on the road will at least be a hybrid.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if you need to buy a new car somewhat soon, or you're looking in the next 5-10 years, are you going to have to get a car? It's probably time to start thinking about those things.
Also, if you want to keep the car for a long time, gonna need to get an electric vehicle or a hybrid, because petrol vehicles just aren't going to be like that easy. They're probably going to increase the prices of fuel, and also just increase the price of rego and on-road costs for a petrol vehicle.
Already
until they just ban petrol vehicles in total.
If you get electric vehicles now in Tasmania, there's incentives to go along with that already, isn't there?
Yeah, you don't have to pay stamp duty for a fully electric vehicle in Tasmania, which is good because stamp duty is expensive.
Yes. So they're already making steps to try and make that happen. So it sounds like best all-rounder is probably going to be a PHEV. The best city driving, if that's all you're doing, is probably an electric vehicle.
If you live like 10-20 minutes from town, you could do an electric vehicle as long as you're not going to go the other way. If all you do is go to town and back to your house and just do town stuff.
Like say if you live in the city and you are a council worker or something, and you drive to the office and then you drive home, and that's the extent of your driving, electric vehicle will be great.
Electric vehicles, you can still have a holiday with your family, but I think that a PHEV would be better for that.
Yep.
And I think that another thing as well is for highway driving, a hybrid might be a better option, because a PHEV, you can only really run it on electric power at low speeds, and it only really boosts your performance at high speeds like a regular hybrid, and it doesn't charge it that quickly at high speeds especially. So I guess it depends on what you need, but what do you think? Do you think a PHEV is the best all-rounder? Or do you think something else? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you own some of these vehicles and you've seen some pros and cons for yourself, also let us know about that.
Yeah. If you own a PHEV, would you get another PHEV, or would you move to an electric vehicle or back to petrol? Let us know. I guess another thing is that we haven't really talked about is hydrogen.
Yes. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's a very good idea. Hydrogen is an explosive gas. So
and no one wants to explode while they're driving?
No, but then again, when you think about it, a petrol car is basically a bomb driving around.
It's true.
If you lit a match and put it in a petrol tank, or dropped it down the filler neck, it's probably going to explode. With a diesel engine even, if you put it down the fuel filler neck, it'll probably just go out. Because diesel is much harder to ignite than petrol, which makes diesel safer.
Yeah.
Another thing is diesel versus hybrid or petrol. So let's go with diesel versus petrol. So diesel generally has more torque than a petrol engine, but a petrol engine will generally have more power.
Yep.
So
if they were to drag race, who would you think would win?
depends. Like petrol probably.
Depends on the launch, maybe. Depends on how long they're driving for.
Depends on the cars, really.
Can you get what car models are there that you can get in the exact same model, a diesel version and a petrol version?
Well, there's a lot of cars. Like we're talking probably mostly like mainstream SUVs, mid-size or bigger. Let's say with like Kia Sorento, right?
You can get it both?
Yeah, you can get it both. You can get a 2.2 litre diesel that has 148 kilowatts, or maybe it's 149, don't know, but 148 kilowatts and 440 newton meters of torque, something like that.
And then what's the petrol specs?
And the petrol is a 3.5 litre
Okay.
petrol V6 that has, I don't know the power outputs, but it has more. But it does not, I believe it does not have as much torque.
Okay. It'd be interesting to see how they fare against one another, because obviously one's higher.
I feel like
in both.
for a big car, for where you can get a diesel option, generally a diesel option is better.
Yep.
Unless it's like a performance car. So if you can get a diesel option, generally the diesel option is better, because if that car's big enough to have a diesel option, then
Yeah.
that's
And
good.
how do they fare price-wise currently to fill up? Diesel's usually a bit more expensive, but
Yeah,
depends which petrol you use too.
but diesels are more fuel efficient, whereas petrol,
Burns through it quicker.
yeah. But overall, I think diesels are good. Diesels are good for off-roading. Like, whereas petrols, they're probably good for like city driving, stop-start sort of driving, because then you can just accelerate and the power's there.
Yep.
But diesels are good, and I think diesels are a good option. The interesting thing was when Subaru completely deleted diesel from their range, which is interesting.
Very interesting.
Like they completely got rid of all the diesel in there.
Wow, I wonder why. Did they mention reasons?
I don't know. I'm not sure why, but if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe and press the bell icon so that you don't miss a single video, and follow us on Instagram while you're at it as well. Catch you next time on Cars_Mad.